You're here. We're here. Here we go. Huskers Live. It's Nebraska football talk for you each and every Tuesday here at the Voice of College Football, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, or wherever you are. You know the time and where you need to be each and every Tuesday. Justin Adams is right here with us. And of course, you can catch him at a number of locations. You got Cheesy Corn Sports, you got Big Ten Talk. That's right here on YouTube as well. And of course, right here at the Voice of College Football. Justin, what's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Staying busy, as you mentioned, with these channels, just constantly going, but constantly in the news of football, and I love it. So let's get to talking about it, I guess.
Which would be for Nebraska a little bit more to talk about concerning National Signing Day last Wednesday than it is for most programs, even though it was still pretty quiet. They did wrap up a few commits that we discussed leading into National Signing Day, but got the official word on a couple athletes on Wednesday.
Yeah, Keona Wilhite was the guy that mentioned before, Washington commit. Once that whole situation went awry, and then was a lock to UCLA, but about a week prior just started getting some momentum, and we had talked about it that it had been 24 hours of smoke coming into last live stream. He ultimately ended up committing to Nebraska. And then, of course, we had the other guy come on as I'm drawing a blank on his name. I have no idea why. We just literally talked about him. But
Khalil Prescott.
That's what it was. He's coming on as a walk-on NIL type of deal. So he won't count towards the 85 scholarships, which is big. And it's one of those things. It's just he's a guy who obviously wanted to come play for Nebraska. He had scholarship offers, but was willing to come on for that. And it's something that it's really hard right now to know the difference. If there's more risk in that versus the scholarship. The dynamic there, just because that's such a new concept of just paying them their scholarship as opposed to giving them a scholarship. I'm really curious to know if there's a preference, or if one of them is, I guess, more favorable than the other, because I don't know necessarily at this point if it's more of, they necessarily want to go there, or if maybe there's more incentive in an NIL structure type of deal. So I'm really interested to learn more about that in the coming years, how that works and what is preferred,
Well, I think, Justin, that that's an honorable mission on your part to try to figure that out and learn more.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I am sure of none of it, except that it's going to keep changing.
Yeah, it's like a loophole. So I feel like at some point the NCAA is going to try to regulate it, of course, as the NCAA does, because if they have a scholarship limit and they're starting to do these kind of NIL type of scholarships, does then that get a little bit of a competitional advantage for the schools with more money, naturally, because they can then add more of those scholarship, caliber guys as walk-ons?
For as much as the sport has changed in 3 years, I'm going to say that we're going to see even more change around this topic in particular with NIL in the next few years, just to kind of keep things together and make it more understandable. Hopefully, I think if nothing else, the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to take charge of it.
Yeah.
We saw that with their agreement last week. And even though that's not, it's official, it's not concrete, it's not anything official in regards to them having power or authority to do anything at this point. But when two entities of that magnitude get together, you can obviously see their purpose, their mission, their intent. So, stay tuned. Things will change, and those two really want to lead the sport, I think, going forward.
Yeah, they really have nothing established there. And admittedly, they were just like, we're just going to kind of, it's going to be targeted towards NIL recruiting, and then we're going to figure this out as we go, that type of thing. So, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming years, though.
Yeah, I think that they just know it's kind of like what you hear in any contract situation before it's signed and everything's finalized, that the two sides have come to basically a mutual agreement, a conditional agreement, so they know where they stand and what they want to accomplish. Just I's and T's need to be dealt with later, and so forth. So then we also
put to Paul's question real quick. Hey, Paul, my baseball jersey actually got dirty. So that's why I don't have it on. My washer is broke. My washing machine is broke and has been for like a month. So I've been going to laundromat. So filtering through clothes. That's why I don't have my baseball jersey on though. Got a little dirt on it. Jackson, Scott, what's up, y'all? Ed.
You're reminding me that when we get done here, I need to run downstairs and grab the laundry. So, but when are we going to get that washer fixed? Is that a priority or no?
Yeah, it is. I got a new one coming up.
Nice.
Everything keeps taking precedent over it. So I'm about to order a new one though. So laundromat's like right there, but starting to get expensive.
Yeah, it gets expensive, gets annoying too.
Yeah, very annoying. Very, very. Especially when it fills up over there.
All right. We had National Signing Day. Matt Rhule met with the media, which used to be solely about the prospects and the commits and the signees, but now not so much. A lot of topics I know that caught your ear dealt with. Okay, we'll pick off recruiting to start. Obviously, that's what National Signing Day is all about. But just Matt Rhule giving a little bit more insight into his approach and the way they want to take the recruiting end of it.
Yeah, one of the first things he opened with, and this is something that, Nebraska's foundation was kind of built off of, in the early days in the peak, heydays of Nebraska, was the walk-on program. And, Rhule stated he was a walk-on, and he's still stressed the importance of it. And that's something that he's trying to make sure that is still relevant and important, even in the modern landscape of college football, that these guys still matter. And, he still says he expects, 3 or 4 of these guys to be starters. And that, it's one of those things where it's something that, having the bodies and having those guys, and that's where you can find those diamonds in the rough that are going to come in and actually breed some competition, with the scholarship guys too. So, all of those, and those are the guys that are going to come in and work, those are the guys that are going to push the scholarship guys to work harder, because, the walk-ons are coming in to prove themselves. And so I do like that he led with the walk-ons, with the walk-on class specifically, and how much he liked it, because that is very important. It gets lost a little bit in today's, college football world, but the walk-ons are extremely important. And, he said they're playing because they love the game and love the university. So in when he was talking about just kind of the recruiting landscape and how he operates and what he does is really, his philosophy is he presents the university for what it is with, you're going to come play in front of, the fan base. Here's what you're going to get with us. We're not going to be flashy. We're not going to be a flashy style of program, but we're going to tell you, we're going to sell you the school, nothing more. And then if you want to come play here, you're going to come play here. And so that's why he says he really likes this group of guys, because they're guys, some of them had scholarship offers elsewhere and still, wanted to come work their way onto the team. And, there's a couple instances, of course, as I mentioned before, where they'll still get kind of a scholarship, but just in terms of these pure walk-on guys and not the preferred walk-ons, those guys are going to be, I like how much focus and attention he put onto that, because I feel like that is something that we kind of left by the wayside during the Frost era and stuff like that, and something that the fans have really wanted them to get back to. So
when in regards to, I lost track of where we were here. My bad. I was thrown off here. So, of course, with the transfer portal and another session coming up after spring practice, that's going to be somewhat determined by how many scholarships are available. So, what did he have to say about where they stand right now?
Yeah, and it's something we've talked about numerous times on here, and I've interacted with some people in the comments about the numbers, and it's funny that it was brought up there, because it's hard to know. I even mentioned to you, like, hey, do they even do gray shirts, blue shirts, and all that stuff anymore? Because I just wasn't sure what their method was going to be to go about it. But he gave about the most real and authentic answer he can get. And he was like, it'll get situated because I know what I'm doing, right? He's like, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. So this is a situation he's been in before. And, he even talked about how the numbers at certain position groups, like we're talking about the quarterback room and the fact that we have 2 true freshmen and, Heinrich Harburg and, a lot of inexperience there, but didn't sound like Rhule was too terribly concerned with the numbers there either in terms of that, because he said, last year we had 6 guys and, we saw how that happened. And when you have 6 guys, you really have a hard time getting everybody the reps that they need. And one of things Rhule says is, you get better at football by playing football. And so it's hard to distribute the reps out over 6 guys, much easier when you have 3, right? A little bit riskier when it comes to injury and stuff like that. You would want more experienced guys, but doesn't seem like there's a lot of panic there. He said he would feel better 4, but 3 is ideal. He's like, I'm good with that. Like it's cool with me. 3 or 4 is ideal. And, but he said they don't really plan on taking another, rocking with the guys we got. There's opportunities that could arise for, extenuating circumstances down the road. But one of the other things that he touched on in terms of when he was talking about the numbers and recruiting, we're kind of talking about when Raiola was getting recruited here with McCord. And it was the McCord coming in here for a year, the Raiola being the freshman, we're going to get them both. But Rhule was talking about, like, I don't like to necessarily get guys unless they're going to be here multiple years. The McCord stuff fell through. May have hinted at that a little bit in his press conference, but the fact that he was like, he doesn't know how they can win with a 1-year guy. He doesn't know how they can win a championship with a 1-year guy. He's still about the foundation and building, and he doesn't know how you can build off of a 1-year guy. And so he's for the future reference for Husker fans, it's probably not going to be an instance where he takes a 1-year guy, but he said unless they absolutely have to. So if we're in a situation later in the spring where there's an extenuating circumstance where a QB is able to, be brought over or whatever, may happen, but I don't think you should expect to see it. Raiola is probably going to be locked and loaded as the day 1 starter. So this is what they got.
I'm sifting through national championship quarterbacks as you stated that, and I'm getting all the way back to Cam Newton before I can come up with a guy that just showed up for a season, won a national championship, and took off. But since then, it's been all at least 2-year starters, if not 3 or 4 years for everybody else.
Yep.
And then even before Cam Newton, and you don't even need to go to the national championship level, even, top 5 to 10 teams in the country. It's pretty rare to have a guy just show up for a year, be able to pull that off. And certainly that's not what there may arise a situation in which Matt Rhule says, this isn't how I want to run my program, but in this particular case, this is what the situation dictates, and we've got a unique opportunity and we'd like to do it just this one time. That may happen. But as you look at the quarterback room, Justin, who reasonably has a shot at starting?
Dylan Raiola. I'm completely honest.
Do you think he's going to start regardless?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Without a doubt. I know Kalen's super talented, right? But when you have a guy like a Raiola coming in here, and as talented as he is and as talented as Kalen is, there's a reason why Raiola is, rated the way he is. And they're all going to have the same with the way that the coaching staff and everybody talks. It's a reset when you get in this building. He talked about it here. He doesn't care about what you did before. Nobody cares. So that's all going to reset. But it is going to be determined by who's going to outplay who. However, just looking at the sample size we have and what we have to go off and just evaluating them, Dylan Raiola has the more refined skill set. And when you have a battle of 2 true freshmen, it's got to go to the guy who's going to be the more ready in terms of just where they were coming into the collegiate level. And Dylan Raiola, some of the throws he was making, I don't think Kalen necessarily can make those throws. I think Kalen has different abilities, and I think he can make a lot of the throws. But there are then those nuances that put Dylan Raiola ahead of a guy like a Kalen. And I think that while Caleb will press him and he will breed competition, he will push Raiola for all it's worth. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to come in and surpass him. But I know Kalen is going to come in there. I know Kalen thinks he can, and I know Kalen's going to come in there and battle every day like he's going to take that spot. And outside of that, Harburg, there's just for Harburg, it's just there's not enough quarterback ability there, and there's not enough time to teach him how to play the quarterback position for him to take valuable experience from your Kalens and your Raiolas. So it's definitely not going to be him.
The reason I go there is because you said something about distributing the reps, getting enough reps for everyone and all of that. And when you've got 6 quarterbacks, I would think the way you would want to approach it, let's say you've got it in the back of your mind, Dylan Raiola is by far the most talented. He's the guy. He's going to prove this. But you want to be able to show that to the team so that they can get behind him and not just obviously say Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback. Nobody's had many reps with him or seen it, but you all know what his 5-star ranking is. So here he is. No, you don't want that. You want him to earn it. You want the team to see that, and you want to build a culture where you go out there and earn it on the field.
Yep.
So I would think that you would give equal amount of reps to everyone, and then you want to take advantage of spring practice, so you don't want to waste it away, and you narrow that down pretty quick. After 2 or 3 days, okay, boom, now it's going to be Dylan and Harburg, let's say, splitting first team reps and distributed from there. I'm just throwing out an example. And then after another week, okay, Dylan's taken over, or maybe you make it a battle throughout the spring, regardless of how much Dylan's making the plays over. I'm just throwing Harburg out as the obvious example. And then take it into August. And a lot of coaches, I believe, know where they're going with the decision, but still, for the sake of competition and to push guys, they will still hold out until early in August. And then they don't want to take it down to the end, because they want to have somebody who's fully looked at as the leader going into the season opener. So they may, let's say 2 weeks to 3 weeks out, make that public and state to the team and the media, okay, that's the guy.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Because they're, naturally, and we'll get into, Glenn Thomas and the staff in a little bit and how they manage the quarterbacks. But, when you have 2 guys coming to the building that are the same classification, they're both freshmen, and you have this short window to develop them into a starting college freshman quarterback, it's just, you can split, like you said, we're going to split the reps evenly and stuff like that. But in the building, the thought is, and the expectation is that, Raiola is coming in with a more advanced skill set, therefore it's his to lose. And so and like I said, we'll get into Glenn Thomas's philosophy on that here a little bit, because he did go into that. He touched on that for a second.
I wonder if Matt Rhule secretly would like to have somebody else in play with some level of success. Not saying that Harburg didn't do a few things last year, but who maybe could push Raiola a little bit harder. Somebody who's had some success at the Power 5 level. And of course, you're only one play away, of course, from a second team quarterback needing to be in there and wanting to have somebody who's proven it. Just a thought.
Yeah, exactly. Because experience wise, it's you get one guy go down, because there was a point last year where all 3, Purdy, Sims, and Harburg were hurt or were banged up. And if you're in a situation like that this year, then you're in panic mode, because we only have 3 on the roster as it sits. So, Harburg's the only guy who's has any experience playing quarterback in college. So you don't really feel good about it in that sense. Kind of like you said, it's the fact that it's 2 true freshmen. There aren't a bunch of upperclassmen to kind of come in and push these guys. But I almost wonder if maybe in a way that it plays to a little bit of advantage for what Matt Rhule wants to build upon here, just because, like he talked about, building the foundation, having guys that are going to be here and be here for not just a year, but beyond that. I think Matt Rhule kind of looks at this quarterback room and he's kind of licking his chops. I think we might have lost Mark here for a second. I guess he didn't like what I was talking about. But anyways, yeah, what I was saying. So, where he can go into, oh, he's back. There you are.
My bad.
No, you're fine. I thought you just got bored.
Yeah, I just check out.
No, but what I was saying is I think he's licking his chops looking at this quarterback room, just thinking of what they can become and what they can do with this in the coming years. I don't think he's worried.
Yeah, so what he's got with Dylan Raiola is, man, as long as he stays healthy and as long as he fulfills his potential, not even to the nth degree. I'm not going to go crazy and say he's going to be first team All-American. He's certainly capable of that. Yeah. Let's say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten for 3 years. This is about as good as it gets in this day and age of college football, that you've just recruited a guy, signed a guy who most likely is going to show himself capable of starting his freshman season, and you got a starting quarterback for 3 years. And unless something crazy happens again, let's put the injury aside. Don't want to think about that. You've got your starting quarterback for the next 3 seasons. That's unheard of in college football now.
Yep. Yeah. And especially with a kid who, comes to a university that, his family has history in, and, we all know the history there. That also leads to the fact that there's more of a potential that, maybe he's one of those guys that they can get to stick around an extra year, depending on how things go in 2 or 3 years, and so it's also that relationship with the university that's very unique, on top of the fact that he's super talented. You get a guy that's as talented as he is for that amount of time. There's multiple advantages there. And to Scott's point, where he said he left the door open for getting someone in the spring portal, he did say that, like I said, but he said he's not counting on it. He said the guys that we have here, these are the guys that we're focusing on, and we're not worried about that right now. So
also, we have this dynamic, of course, with a new quarterbacks coach in Glenn Thomas, Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator. They have to work together. Their philosophies have to mesh in conjunction also with Matt Rhule. And so I know that they addressed the other day with Glenn Thomas's introductory news conference, basically what that may look like.
Yeah. And the first, hint at it was Rhule's comments after signing day. He just basically confirmed, because they did ask some questions about Glenn Thomas. Glenn Thomas's introductory press conference happened a few days later. But what he said in there is basically like, he just confirmed that the co-OC stuff, because people did get confused when Glenn Thomas came over and they gave him the co-offensive coordinator role / QB coach. And he just clarified that Satterfield's going to be calling the plays. Like nothing changes there. It's business as usual. But the reason, why it's important and imperative that those things really aren't important and those titles aren't important is because all 3 of these guys work together at Baylor and Temple. And so essentially all this is about is they're bringing those same philosophies and stuff that they used over there over here. So the language and everything, the communication's consistent. These guys know what each other does. And so all they're going to do is that over here. So for people, if they're concerned about Satterfield still calling the plays, calling the plays doesn't really matter. They're all going to be in the game plan. Glenn Thomas is going to have a say in the game plan. Donovan Raiola is going to have a say in the game plan. Satterfield, everybody is going to have their hands in this bag. They're going to formulate that offensive game plan, and then Satterfield's going to go out there and he's going to bring, because you can't have multiple. It's hard to have multiple minds calling plays at the same time. So you get those together during the week. Satterfield's going to take those. He trusts Satterfield. We got to trust Rhule because he hasn't steered us wrong yet, except for just Jeff Sims. But I digress. But yeah, so Satterfield's going to be calling the plays, and and he's going to be the tight end coach. And he did also mention the importance of Satterfield being specifically over the tight ends, because he came out in this press conference, said, and I've said it time and time again, the way Satterfield runs his offense, big, physical, multiple tight ends, and physical run game, downhill run game to set up a deep pass game. And so he essentially just alluded to that. But the fact that he thinks that tight ends, because tight ends somewhat, in the grand scheme of the casual fan, tight ends are somewhat of an afterthought, but it's a very complex position. And, he went into kind of the complexity of the tight end position because, the way I see it is you got a guy like Travis Kelce, right? You got a guy who's the receiving style of tight end. You got a guy like George Kittle. George Kittle is a better tight end than Travis Kelce. When it comes to playing the tight end position, George Kittle is the better all-around tight end. And Travis Kelce will even admit that. So there's more than just being able to catch. You got to be able to know every single play in the playbook. You got to be able to run block. You got to be able to pass block sometimes. You got to be able to, block and release. You got to know a lot of different things. You got to know every route concept. And so there is very important, like he talked about, that Satterfield is back just specifically over the tight ends and can work with those guys and isn't diverted from both. And if you think about the tight ends as being that important, well, just think about how important the QBs are. And so Satterfield's attention being split between those two rooms last year is kind of what he was talking about. And then now, not only will the quarterbacks get better, of course, the tight ends will get better because he can go in there and he can teach hands-on route running, blocking concepts. And he also said that Satterfield's an aggressive person by nature, and that, he doesn't, the aggressiveness doesn't always mix with the quarterbacks. So he's like, we can use that in the tight end room, but doesn't really always mesh with the quarterbacks. I mean, Bill O'Brien, he's a psycho in his own right when it comes to yelling at quarterbacks, getting aggressive with quarterbacks. But, it's one of those things where it's like now he's in the role where he feels Satterfield's comfortable being. And Glenn Thomas, he clearly trusts him because he talked about how, Glenn Thomas's ability to teach a QB from the ground up and how he's gone through different offenses and, different levels, and his teaching has always been consistent no matter where he is. And he finds he mentioned, Rhule mentioned it, and then they asked Glenn Thomas in the follow-up, and both of their answers connected, where he goes, he finds the level the quarterback's at, and he goes from there. He's really good at finding that level, and building them up from it. He's not going and breaking them down to build them up his way. He's going and finding them, and he's just bringing them up from where they are. And he's really good at just kind of identifying that and just getting them to the next level.
This is what comes to mind when I see some of these titles. First of all, let's go to the real world. And a manager can mean one thing in one business and something slightly different in another business. But we all have a concept of what a manager is. But if you go to different companies, the responsibilities could be different.
Mm-hmm.
Assistant manager, associate manager, all supervisor, all these different titles. Okay. Yep. In football, I see co-offensive coordinator. And again, if we took all the co-offensive coordinators in the nation and we went and visited practice and we sat in the film room and did all those things, we would see, okay, well, they have more authority and they have more going on than they do. And it would be slightly different. But here's my thought. That as soon as you tie, so for the quarterback's coach, there is certainly enough for him to do. If that's all he is a quarterback's coach. So he's wanting to develop their fundamentals, all their mechanics, everything related to how they approach the position physically.
Correct.
And then there is teaching them how to read coverages, how to work with their center in particular, how to work with the entire offensive line, how to make line call, how to do all of that. And obviously all of the nuances with working with their receivers, all of that. Correct. Okay. As soon as you tie that co-offensive coordinator title onto the quarterback's coach, then I think about, is that particular coach, the co-offensive coordinator, even if they're not the one calling plays, they're the one helping the play caller throughout the week, going through the opponent, looking at tendencies, looking at what they do well, making those suggestions, having that input, and having that collaboration, even though, hey, on game day, it's all Marcus Satterfield, and
Yep.
he's calling the shots, but he's had all this input from all these other guys, as you just mentioned, that can provide their insight and their perspective, and it's a collaboration when it all comes together.
Exactly. And you mentioned a good point there too, especially with the quarterbacks, and focusing specifically, on them. When you were talking about, teaching them different concepts and all this other stuff, it's another thing that Glenn Thomas kind of spoke to in his presser. He was talking about how the differences between the NFL and the collegiate level, because he said in the NFL, it's a lot more situational. There's a lot more gray. He said, if this, then we're going to do this, the option, like choice routes, or, the ability to change the play at the line of scrimmage based off reading the shell coverage, those type of deals, those small details. But he said, when you're in college football, and for lack of a better terms, not dumbing it down, I guess I won't put it that way, but it's more finite. It's more detail oriented, specific. It's like, okay, well, if plan A doesn't work, here's what plan B is. It's not like if plan A doesn't work, go work off beat, off rhythm, and figure it out, because you let guys operate like that sometimes when you trust them. A guy like, although I don't like him, Patrick Mahomes, he's good at off schedule plays, but Andy Reid trusts him in that offensive system to be able to find that play. And so in college, you gotta, kind of build them up to that point and really just tell them, hey, well, here's plan B. And then as they develop over time, plan B just becomes, instinctual. And then they're like, okay, here's plan C. And then that becomes instinctual. And then by the time that they developed, or their, junior, senior year, they are running the offense in the entirety. They're getting out there, they're reading shell coverages, they're able to identify blitzers, that, and they're changing stuff up there. So that was one thing that he did mention and was important to him. And in terms of his relationship with Satterfield, he said they've known each other for 20 years. So it's a working relationship that they had. I do believe the co-OC might have just been a tag that they can put on maybe for more money, or it just looks better on his resume, pull him over from an NFL job, at least give him like a coordinator style of role, they have similar schematic conversations at Temple and Baylor. Like I said, they use the same language. And one of the things Glenn Thomas did mention is the 4-minute offense and the 2-minute defense. And that to me is important too, because in what they want to do with the downhill run scheme, that right there is exactly what they're looking at. A 4-minute offense is an offense that can go down and put a drive together, but can also score quick when need be, right? You probably come out, put a 7-minute, 8-minute drive together. They can also come out, put a 2-minute drive together with explosive pass game if you set it up. And then the 2-minute defense, just keeping your defense off the field, getting your offense out there, wearing the other defense down. So they all have, they've all spoken about that. They all have the same philosophies. They all talk about the positional stuff. They all talk about the culture. And so it's business as usual for these three. It's just like getting the band back together. So this is all just kind of like moving forward. We're going to finally see this come to fruition in terms of play calling and all that stuff. So everything that everybody was concerned with last year really can reset going into this year, because what Satterfield was working with last year, he wasn't even able to run his offensive scheme the way he wanted to. We didn't have a downfield passing game. We didn't have a quarterback who completed downfield pass consistently. We didn't have a downhill physical run game because we were so banged up in the running back room. We were running with our quarterbacks. Our leading rusher was Heinrich Haarberg, so people just need to kind of wash off of what was last year and just understand that these guys will work together before, and we're going to start to finally see what they're going to be putting together on the field, which is a lot of what we saw at Baylor. And, that was a very balanced offense. I think they had like 285 yards passing to 165 yards rushing when that offense was at its best. And that's a pretty balanced offense. So, I'm really excited about them three coming together and seeing what they got and the way they talk. One of the main things I was curious to hear is when Glenn Thomas got up there and spoke specifically how much the language just in that matched with them. And it just, everything just kind of like, you can tell these guys are locked in and in sync perfectly. And it seems like everybody in the building is kind of at that point.
Bone-led, corn-fed, Appreciate you being here, man. When will the show catch up with the sellout streak? So he's talking about the number of shows. So we're at
Oh man,
159.
that's math right
The
there.
sellout streak, I believe I'm seeing 396 is what's in the chat. 396, 159. So I'll get you started on this,
2 weeks
folks.
a year.
52 a year out of us. And 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7.
7 typically a year. So we're gaining by 45 per year. You do the math, you take it away from there, folks.
I don't know math that well. That's why I do football. I am not a math guy.
But you're a fantasy football guy. You got to know some math.
That's true. I mean, analytics are fun when football's involved. But when it comes to just addition, subtraction, no, that's not my bread and butter right there.
All right, folks, we're here every Tuesday, 6 Central Time. You know what? Everybody who loves the show, loves what we're doing. Justin's posting videos throughout the week. 159 consecutive weeks we're here. Bring our one homework assignment, and you can blame me for it, not Justin. Bring one person with you next week. One friend, family member, acquaintance on social media, whoever it is. Bring one college football fan with you, preferably Nebraska fan, but college football fan. Bring somebody with you next week. Why don't we do that?
Bring a Colorado Iowa fan. Make it real fun.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Don't do that.
I tell those Iowa fans after we do our show that ends actually, folks, and you can get an early start on Tuesdays. You can join us on the Iowa show and come over here and you control on the Iowa show. But I invite those folks to come on over here.
Yep. They don't show up though. We beat them in basketball, women's basketball. So they're a little upset about that.
Oh, did hear about that. Okay.
Yep. I digress.
Now, Justin, this one is all you. Winter mat drills, breakdown, and results.
Yeah. So it was the winter stuff that they talked about. They call them winter mat drills. All that stuff. So he kind of dove into what that meant, and it's to your point earlier where you were talking about, and I was kind of talking about where the guys are just like, you come in the building and it's a reset from there, right? Like you're in the building, and each year it's a reset too, right? Like each and every person in that building has to earn it each and every single year, with the philosophy that Matt Rhule preaches. And so with the winter drills and all that, the way he had it set up is he was talking about, they get points for different things. They even get points for Huskers supporting Huskers, where they're going to different sporting events, they'll get a point for that, or they'll lose a point for not going. And he's like, what this stuff hasn't, what the points have to do with, they're not due to, physical stuff like that. They're, leadership, and they're guys that are just doing the extra, not because they have to, but because they want to compete. And so this was my favorite. I think my favorite part right here was this, because how important this factors into everything. And I think this might be a blip on the radar just because it's not necessarily about the physical aspect of football. But this is where the cream rises from the crop, in my opinion. For me, right? I'm a competitive type of person. If we're playing Uno and I lose, I'm going to be mad. People don't like to play anything with me because I hate losing. And that's kind of what he talked about in this, right? Like even with these point things, for these little things, that, going to extra meetings or going to do extra things that you don't have to do, those are where the leaders are going to show up. And that's what I like about this, because the guys that, he mentioned the guys that could have went in the draft and came back, like those guys don't start any level above the rest of the guys. Those guys are all on a level playing field. So they have to come in, and these guys are going to push them to be able to go and do these things. And to be in the NFL, they're going to it's discipline, it's structure. You're going to have to do stuff you don't want to do. So even if they don't want to do it, they're getting out there and doing it. Jamal Banks, though, for what it's worth, he said Jamal Banks has dominated in that regard. Jamal Banks just got there, So Jamal Banks, he said, is killing it. He did say Michael Mskua has a lot to learn. The Florida transfer offensive lineman says he's got a lot to learn about the culture and stuff like that. So just a little nugget there on a couple of the portal guys. But, he says he wants guys that are accountable, going to do the right things. And he said before, the guys kind of all voted for their buddies. And now it's kind of like, we're going to see who performs, and everybody around us, all your teammates and everybody is going to see who performs and see who the leaders are. The leaders are going to establish themselves. So this was a way for them to kind of sit by the wayside and really, observe. And the last point, that kind of alluded to this, where he was talking about the Iowa game, like, I don't want guys who are going to come in here and be upset and be like, I hate that we lost to Iowa. After we lose to Iowa, he said he don't want guys that are going to be crying in the locker room after losing to Wisconsin. He said this type of stuff is going to have guys fighting for every single point. And when you fight every single play, every single rep, every single point, you become a great player, you become a disciplined player, and you become a successful player. And it's dragging these guys, he wants these guys to be drug into deep water, and he's going to see who sinks and he's going to see who swims. And to me, that's the best way to do it, because, throw people in the fire and see who makes it out. And those are the people you want to run into war with. So that's what I really like about this winter stuff. And I think, the emphasis where it is, this is a very, very key part of the offseason.
And then we've got, of course, Glenn Thomas did meet with the media. And was there anything else based on what he had to say that struck a chord with you?
Well, I mentioned before about, finding the culture and then him meeting the quarterback's levels and stuff like that. But one of the things too, he said when he got in the building, he could see the excitement difference and places he had been before. He sees the energy to improve, which could be coach speak. They probably got to say stuff like that. But look into more of the nuances of what he said about, the quarterback position. He's like, they asked him what traits he holds in high regard. And, he's like, of course, if it's a passer, they got to have elite accuracy. If they're an athlete, do they have enough passing acumen to get you through? And, so that's like a Heinrich Harburg type of guy. But the one key point that I did like that he mentioned is everybody has a say in all of this stuff, whether it be the quarterbacks or whether it be recruits or whether it be, I had mentioned this because I pulled an Athletic article on the video I did about, what is a general manager, director of player personnel and the differences and all that stuff. I'd found an article from the Athletic in 2022. And in that article, Matt Rhule is talking about kind of how he structures his, how he does his recruiting. And I mentioned it on here, I believe, too, where he was just talking about, I get 40 guys in a room, right? And we're going to watch, some recruits, and in private, or they're going to write down, who they think stood out to them or whatever. And then, so we're going to get 40 differing opinions, but everybody's going to have a say. Everybody in that room is going to have a say on which player they think. Because he's like, I'm not the know-all. Satterfield's not the know-all. Glenn Thomas not the know-all. We need everybody's hand in this pot. And then from there, he ultimately makes the decision. But, that was a year ago when they were talking to him specifically about director of player personnel, recruiting, et cetera. Fast forward to now, Glenn Thomas was talking about how what he likes about Matt Rhule, and one of the reasons he came here was he lets all minds come together. And he says, in quotes, he's going to sort it out, put the best game plan together. So he's going to sort through what everybody's opinions are, what everybody has to say, and put the best product, whether it be players, game plan, et cetera, out on the field. And to me, that is exactly the perfect formula, because you can never have too many opinions, but you can have not enough opinions. In my opinion, when it comes to something like this, in a room of people you trust and a room of minds that you hired for their minds, you got to make the best use of them all. And so the messaging there being the same as what Rhule even talked about, what I saw from an article a year ago. And I think the other thing too, we saw the 49ers offense. This was actually funny to me, thinking about it in hindsight, because Matt Rhule had talked about the 49ers offense and like, because they talk about wanting to run that 49ers positionless style of offense. And when he was talking about it, he's like, the one thing I like about Shanahan is like, he does he does the motions and stuff like that. What he'll do is he'll come out and he says he gets into a base concept and he can run 4 different plays off of that base concept, right? Using different motions, etc. He's going to just try to find a way to get the eyes tricked. And with that, like, positionless style of offense too, what he was talking about is, like, even though he has all those wrinkles and stuff like that, what he does is he's still, the outside zone, running away from the defender coming off the edge, but what he does and what Shanahan does is he runs the ball to win the games no matter what, except in every Super Bowl he's been in, he's lost the game because he refused to run the ball. I just thought that part of it was funny, just because, should have ran the ball more on Sunday, huh? Anyways, but so I thought that was funny looking back in hindsight, the fact but that is what they want to do. They want to, and this is great for Nebraska fans to hear. They want to run the ball. They want to win the game by running the ball, and whether behind, up, down, or whatever, they don't want to get away from that. And that's what Nebraska fans have been yearning for. And that should be, hearing that in and of itself should just be the excitement we need going forward to know that this team's going to be run the right way and run the way we want it to. And now they got some personnel in place in terms of, Dante Dowdles, and hopefully Gabe Irvin comes back. He's, healthy after the spring, because he won't be practicing in the spring. So we can get some of those physical downhill runners. But yeah, I thought the comparison over there to Shanahan, and then how he runs the ball to win the games, but literally didn't run the ball enough to win any of those 3 Super Bowls. So
I was scurrying to get to the box score because I was just curious how many times they did run versus how much they passed on Sunday.
They were passing way too much based on how little it was working. You got CMC, a guy who literally was like 3rd in the MVP as a running back, and when it's a quarterback award. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, they ran 31 times. They passed it 39.
Yeah. And so how many carries did CMC have? So Christian McCaffrey 22 carries.
2.
Yeah. And then Brock Purdy threw the ball 38 times. So, they got Christian McCaffrey involved in the pass game. He had 8 receptions for 80 yards, but I don't know, man. You got to give him the ball more there at the end, because when they put the ball in his hands, it worked.
Yeah, I can't say I watched it closely enough to comment on that.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't really
really
got an opinion on that. I definitely had an opinion for everybody piling on Kyle Shanahan. I have no issue with people correcting or having criticisms of preparation and in-game adjustments and all of that.
He's a mastermind offensively.
I had issues with people basically saying, he blew his shot. He's never getting back.
That's crazy.
He's not going to win one.
3 times.
44.
He's been there 3 times. He's fine. Trust me. That team
can't win the big one. Yeah.
Yeah, that team's fine.
I threw out a list of guys on Twitter who were said at one point in their careers that they couldn't win the big one, that then won a ton of big ones.
That's all just it's people just talking because it's in the moment. And I guess the first thing people want to do is they want to find somebody to blame, and who else but the head coach. I just wanted to see him run with Christian McCaffrey more, just because Brock Purdy was having so little success there in the second half with throwing the ball, even just the intermediate throws. He was missing a lot of throws.
I don't know what this really matters at this point, but do you have any perspective on Tony White? Of course, the UCLA job has been taken. Deshaun Foster, they stayed in-house. So Tony White was certainly on those candidates lists to go west, but it didn't happen.
No, yeah, that was and it's interesting. I saw a poll somewhere about, what was the biggest offseason move. And so I'll ask you, and there was 4 options, but I'm going to put 2 out there. Do you think keeping Tony White was more important, or do you think getting Dylan Raiola was more important? It's a tough one, I know.
I'm going to say getting Dylan Raiola.
I would probably agree. right? Just because I think Tony White may only have one more year and then he's going to be a head coach somewhere. But the Nebraska fans, actually 47% voted Tony White staying. And not to dismiss Tony White. Very, very, it's very, very important that we keep him. But I was really surprised by that result. And, Tony White turned one of the worst defenses. I think we're 110th in 22 even, into a top 25 defense, with a lot of the same personnel that were on the previous year's team. The dude is an excellent coach. When the UCLA stuff came up, he had been rumored in head coaching jobs earlier in the offseason, but that's why Nebraska kind of restructured everything and, brought him back on, gave him the pay bump, and he was, sticking around. Then the UCLA job suddenly opened up. So here's my thing really with why I never thought Tony White was going to take the UCLA job, because we had a common interest in Keona Wilhite, the recruit that we landed, because about a week before Keona Wilhite was coming to committed to Nebraska, Nebraska had removed themselves from the recruitment of him because he was basically a lock to go over to UCLA. However, 36 hours prior to, or, probably longer, 96 hours prior to signing day, all of a sudden we're back in it and he starts getting crystal balls to Nebraska. Well, my initial thought was that probably because something's going on with Chip Kelly, because Chip Kelly had been rumored for a long time, is Chip Kelly going to go to the NFL? Blah, blah, blah. We did a show on it, the Big Ten show, and, a couple of us were basically like, Chip Kelly's probably the most obvious option to leave to go to an NFL role. And so when that happened, I was really curious as to why, if Keona Wilhite left UCLA because Chip Kelly was leaving, then Tony White recruited him to Nebraska and had to probably know under the surface that that's what was happening over there. Why would Tony White then take a job at UCLA? Why would have Tony White recruited him to, and I understand because, he went there, Tony White went there, but, I think Tony White is going to have better options out there than what Chip Kelly left UCLA at. What Chip Kelly left UCLA at is a very bad recruited school. NIL's bad right there. The fan support's not good. And so I think Tony White was smart in staying. And I think he has his pick next year. If he comes out and kills it with his defense again, I think he's going to have a lot more options on the table, a lot more resources, and can get him in a better job. I think that UCLA role might have been just a ticking time bomb for him to go over there and just kind of it be a disaster and him ruin his prospect as a head coach in the future.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I have said many times that I'm a little fascinated with UCLA. I don't understand why it's not a better job, why they haven't have been more successful. They should be, based on the size of the school, where they're located, and a lot of other things. But they don't have the commitment from the administration, is what it comes down to get the job done in football, which is surprising, especially since they are now going to benefit from all this Big Ten money that they wouldn't want to put a great product on the field and get somebody who's going to lead them. Not that I'm not discounting or disparaging Deshaun Foster in any way.
Mm-hmm.
There were better coaching candidates, more qualified candidates out there, but they seem to go the cheap route and the sure thing, and not the sure thing from the standpoint of knowing that they're going to accept the job. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
With Deshaun Foster.
Yeah. Cause Tony White, he was an alum there, right? But that's one piece of a big puzzle of why he should go coach somewhere. And Tony White's smart enough to be able to look at the big picture and look where he's at now and what he can build, cause he's fairly young. He can build his coaching, a little more and just throw himself into a better opportunity. And I think that's what he did. And I think that might've been what a couple of the other coaches did. I didn't really like UCLA's odd to get who they want. I thought maybe they'd end up with David Shaw or something like that. Totally didn't have Deshaun Foster on my list. I will say that I was wrong there.
I had him on my list. I had a list of 13. I posted a video and ranked them all, 13 all the way up to number 1. Mm-hmm. I had Deshaun Foster like 8 or 9, but I considered him a possibility.
Yeah.
But Nebraska fans, you guys know that alums don't necessarily always work out.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even Michigan, Juwan Howard basketball. I think it fails more often than it works.
Yeah.
So
next show in a few minutes here, Michigan Wolverines live over with John Diadamo on the Michigan channel. He is going the Baltimore Ravens route because of all the connections there on the defensive side. Wink Martindale coming in, who was a DC at Baltimore, of course, before the Giants. So they have some Baltimore insiders that they are going to have on the show again, Michigan live right after us over on the Michigan channel. Folks, appreciate you being here. Bring a friend or 2 or 50 with you next Tuesday, and we'll do it all again. Justin, what do you have going on this week?
So Big Ten show, recording a video tonight with an Oregon guy. So, just doing a program overview series. They've been doing well. I think our last one for Purdue got, almost 5,000 views. So our program overviews are doing well. We're going to do one for Oregon football tonight. So if y'all just want to check in on anything with your Big Ten brethren, and there will be Husker content coming too, just head on over to the Big Ten Show at Big Ten Show on YouTube and also on X.
There we go. Our next show, once again, it's just in a few minutes. Michigan Live with John Diadamo over on the Michigan channel. We'll see you on back here next Tuesday, folks.